Let's go over the top 10 PPR wide receivers that should be coming off the board in your league. The first wide receiver that should be coming off the board in your league is Cooper Kupp. Yes, the offensive player of the year. Wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. Cooper Kupp, of course, is in tier 1. Cooper Kupp was number 1 in targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns. And he did it exactly how you want him to. He was consistent. Cooper Kupp was a wide receiver 1 over 80% of the time last year. And in 6 of the 17 games, he was top 2. Cooper Kupp was winning you weeks left and right last year. I think that he is a very solid pick at wide receiver. Though there is an argument for Justin Jefferson, I will be going Cooper Kupp for the first wide receiver off the board. Also, he just got paid. Cooper Kupp just signed a 5-year, $110 million deal. He didn't want to break the bank though. He's only the 6th highest paid wide receiver in the league. Most wide receivers try to set the market. Cooper Kupp is doing the Tom Brady thing, taking a little discount so the rest of his team can be better. Maybe that's going to be a good choice to keep the team together. But after having 145 receptions, almost 2,000 yards, and 16 touchdowns, he could have asked for more. But I do think it's going to help his team. So that's why I have Cooper Kupp as my number 1 wide receiver off the board. The second wide receiver that should be coming off your board, Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson is the wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. I also have him in tier 1. He's an absolute beast. Dominated last year with over 1,600 yards. Also, there's been a change in head coach. Out goes Mike Zimmer. In comes Kevin O'Connell, the previous offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. And apparently, he's going to be bringing that Rams offense over to the Minnesota Vikings. I love that. And one of my favorite parts of this quote, O'Connell, the former Rams offensive coordinator under Sean McVay, said in March that Jefferson would be moved around the offensive formation like Cooper Kupp did in LA. I love that. Moving him across the field. You're never going to know where Justin Jefferson is going to be lining up. I love the versatility of that, and I definitely think that's going to help him in the long run. So Justin Jefferson is my number 2 wide receiver, obviously in tier 1, but I can't blame you if you go with him number 1 overall. I'll be sticking with Cooper Kupp, but Justin Jefferson is a beast. The third wide receiver that should be coming off the board in your leagues, Stefon Diggs. Can you dig it? As you can see, I love Stefon Diggs. He's one of my favorite players. And if you're looking for a fantasy name, Can You Dig It is a great one I've used in the past. Stefon Diggs is actually a tier below Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp in tier 2. As you can see, the colors on the left indicate how confident I am in them. And I love tier 1 and tier 2. They're great. Tier 3, tier 4, they're good receivers. Tier 5, they're also good, but I'm less confident as my number 1. I'm very confident with tier 1 through 4 as my number 1 wide receiver. Stefon Diggs had double-digit touchdowns last year, over 1,200 yards. And my personal favorite stat of his, he was number 1 in the league in end-zone targets. End-zone targets are targets 5 yards and in. He was targeted 22 times 5 yards and in. That means when the Bills get in close, they're looking at Stefon Diggs. And it doesn't hurt that he just got paid. Stefon Diggs just signed $104 million. Ooh, that's a lot of money. With $70 million of it guaranteed. So he should be locked up through 2027. I love Stefon Diggs. I think he's a great receiver and a great offense, and he's clearly the number 1 threat. So feel secure in Stefon Diggs as your number 1 receiver. The fourth wide receiver that should come off of your board in fantasy football, Davante Adams. He's moving from the Green Bay Packers over to the Las Vegas Raiders. I have him also in my tier 2, right behind Stefon Diggs. Davante Adams is an absolute beast. Last year, he was unbelievable. Over 1,500 yards, double-digit touchdowns, as usual. And of course, he dominated the red zone. He also won you some weeks last year. 6 times last year, he was a top 4 wide receiver. The question is, what will he be in Las Vegas? The Athletic's Tashawn Reed is reporting that Davante Adams is almost exclusively lining up on the outside. According to Sports Info Solutions charting, Davante Adams normally lines up in the slot. So I'm very curious to see how they're going to be lining him up. Is he going to be a primary outside receiver? I hope that they move him around and he's not stationary. But regardless, Davante Adams is an absolute beast. He was second in the league last year in targets and reception. And I believe he's going to get close to that again. He's definitely going to be the #1 target on this team. And when Derek Carr finds a guy that he likes, he targets him, whether he's open or not. So I think that Davante Adams is going to get his. I do think that he is going to get double-digit touchdowns, which Derek Carr doesn't throw a lot of touchdowns normally. But I feel like with Davante Adams, that trend's going up. The 5th wide receiver coming off the board should be Ja'Marr Chase. Wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. I have Chase in tier 2 right after Stefon Diggs and Davante Adams. Yes, I know I have him lower than most people. I'm going to explain why. These are PPR rankings, and Ja'Marr Chase just gets less volume than everybody else. He only had 81 receptions last year, whereas everybody ahead of him, 100 or more. He was also very efficient last year, and that was most likely due to his avoided tackles. He had the 4th most avoided tackles last year with 19, and he was 3rd in yards after the catch. So once he gets the ball in his hands, he does work with it, but he doesn't get the ball as often as these other receivers. He's kind of a boom bust. His high is extremely high, but his floor is lower than some of these other receivers on a weekly basis. But he is apparently getting more comfortable with the offense. From Ja'Marr Chase, quote, "Last year I was just out there running routes and having fun again. Now I've got all the small details down, like learning how to set people up before the next route. Maybe I can move around more when I see different things in film." This means he's starting to understand the wide receiver position even more, and that's good. I mean, he was a rookie. He's bound to get smarter and know more things about the offense, know more things about the NFL. So he's trending in the right direction. Don't get me wrong, love Ja'Marr Chase. He's a great receiver. I'm just a little concerned he's not going to get targeted as much as these other guys. The number 6 wide receiver off your board should be CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is the #1 wide receiver on what should be a pretty good Dallas Cowboys offense. I have him in a tier below Chase Edmonds. I do still like CeeDee Lamb. These receivers are still in a good range. Big fan of them. I'm happy with them as my wide receiver 1s. CeeDee Lamb is a very talented wide receiver. And even though he is the wide receiver 1 for this team, I am a little concerned about his targets. Now, he's never really gotten a lot of targets in the past, and by a lot, I mean 150 or more. The most targets he's had in a year was actually last year with 116. Now, Amari Cooper's gone, so I do think that that increases, but I'm curious about how much it increases. Dak Prescott has never been one to hyper-focus one target, but right now, the Cowboys don't really have a lot of options. And with Amari Cooper gone, Michael Gallup still injured. We're not sure when he's going to be coming back. James Washington just went down. It looks like it's really going to be CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, and the running backs. So I'm thinking that CeeDee Lamb should get a lot more targets. And if he does enter that 140, 150 target range, I think he's going to do a lot of work with it because he was very good at avoided tackles. He had 9 avoided tackles last year. That's 4th in the league, tied with Ja'Marr Chase. He was also pretty solid with his yards after catch. One thing we will need him to get better at is red zone targets, end zone targets, and red zone and end zone touchdown. When you get 20 yards and in, I want you to start getting targeted more because those are money targets. Those turn into touchdowns. Speaking of touchdowns, we're also going to need him to increase those. 6 touchdowns last year, 5 the year before. For him to be drafted as high as he is being drafted, I'm going to need to see 9 or 10, preferably 10 or more. So I do think he's a great wide receiver, and he's here because of his upside. There's a chance that the 2 I have behind him end above him. But CeeDee Lamb could come through, which is why I have him in. The 7th wide receiver that should be coming off your board is Mike Evans, wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I love Mike Evans. Not just because I'm a Bucs fan, he's just a great wide receiver. I have Mike Evans in the same tier as CeeDee Lamb, my 3rd tier. I think that he has a great quarterback and a great offense. Now, the offensive line is dealing with some issues at the moment. The center's obviously down. The backup center got dinged up. But Mike Evans is Tom Brady's go-to target, especially in the red zone and the end zone. There's 2 things you can pretty much guarantee for Mike Evans. 1, he's going to get at least 1,000 yards. Mike Evans currently has the record for the most 1,000-yard seasons to begin a career. 8 in a row. He's an absolute beast. He's going to get you 1,000 yards, and he's going to get you double-digit touchdowns. Since Tom Brady has been on the Buccaneers, Mike Evans has had 13 or more touchdowns. And when they get in close, they're looking for Mike Evans in the end zone. He is currently dealing with a hamstring injury, unfortunately. But apparently Todd Bowles is looking at this as more of a day-to-day issue. If Todd Bowles isn't concerned, I'm not super concerned. We're early enough in preseason to where this shouldn't be affecting his week 1 status, so I think he should be good. The 8th receiver that should be coming off of your board, Deebo Samuel, wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. Deebo Samuel is in tier 3 right next to Mike Evans. Deebo Samuel is a beast. He gets it done in the receiving game and in the rushing game. He had 360 plus yards rushing last year. That's incredible. That's the 2nd most rushing yards in the last decade. And he's tough to bring down. He had 784 yards after catch last year. That was the 2nd most in the league. And he had 20 avoided tackles. That was also 2nd in the league. Deebo Samuel is an incredible wide receiver. And one of the biggest issues we've seen from him this offseason was worrying about whether or not he was going to be on the team. And the team settled that up with a nice new contract. 3 years, $75 million. Dang, that's a lot of money. Woo! Deebo said he's willing to do whatever it takes to win. And yes, that includes being a wide back. He said the reports about him being upset with how the team uses him, it's just false. Deebo Samuel is going to be a good receiver this year. Honestly, if he didn't have Trey Lance as a quarterback, I would probably have him higher up on this list. But because Trey Lance is a little bit of an unknown, Jimmy Garoppolo, I kind of know what I'm going to get with him. Trey Lance, I'm not quite sure how the offense is going to look. He's a running quarterback, so it could look a little bit different. But I do think that he's going to be fantastic this year, and he's actually being underdrafted. So don't feel bad about picking up Deebo Samuel in the 2nd round. Deebo Samuel is going to be snatching the chain of the defense, just like in Friday. My grandmama gave me that chain. My 9th wide receiver off the board, Tyreek Hill. Now, Tyreek Hill is in a lower tier. He's in tier 4. As you can see, it's still green. I do like him, and I think that he's going to be good. I'm fine with him being my number 1, but there's a lot of question marks on Tyreek Hill. First off, as you know, Tyreek Hill has moved from the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes over to the Miami Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa. Now, Tua is not a terrible quarterback. He gets a bad rap, but he's not Patrick Mahomes, and I don't even think that's that big of an insult. He's all right. I'm hoping that Tyreek Hill and that vertical threat can help open up this offense. I think him and Jalen Waddle are going to be a good tandem. Now, one of the things that I do find to be interesting is Jalen Waddle did work in the receiving game. He was the primary target, but now with Tyreek Hill there, how are the targets going to be split? And according to Tyreek Hill, one of the reasons why he was unhappy with the Kansas City Chiefs was he felt like he was being underutilized. Quote, "If teams are going to give us favorable one-on-one matchups against their best corner, I don't see why teams don't utilize their best receiver." Sounds like he wants to get the ball. He felt underutilized. Now, just to be clear, Tyreek Hill received the most targets in his career last year with 155, and he felt underutilized. I'm assuming he wants more than that now. Well, Jalen Waddle's got to eat too. So I'm curious as to how that dynamic is going to work. Everybody seems to be having Jalen Waddle pretty high in their rankings. Tyreek Hill signed a 4-year, $120 million deal. Gosh, dog, that's a lot of money. Woo! Don't go all spending it in one place. All in all, Tyreek Hill has a few question marks, but I do think he will be a viable wide receiver in fantasy football. My 10th wide receiver off the board, Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen slides in after Tyreek Hill in tier 4. Keenan Allen is a PPR beast. Let me tell you why. Last year, Keenan Allen had the most targets in his career, 150. That's a good sign for the offense moving forward. There's a few things you need to know about Keenan Allen. He's very consistent. 4 out of the last 5 years, he's had 100 or more receptions. 4 out of the last 5 years, he's had 1,100 or more yards. And also 4 out of the last 5 years, he's had 6 touchdowns. And the one where he didn't have 6 touchdowns, he had 8. But I consider that an outlier when you're getting 6 each year other than that. So you can pretty much book Keenan Allen for 100 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Pretty much just write that in. Anything more than that is a bonus. So if you're looking for a consistent PPR wide receiver threat at the end of the 2nd round, Keenan Allen's your guy. 100 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 6 touchdowns? Sign me up. So that's gonna do it for my top 10 PPR wide receivers. Who did I have too high? Who do I have too low? Who's not on this list that you think should be? Leave your comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Let me know if you have any questions, and good luck in your drafts. Peace.